Good afternoon and welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the MarketSite in Times Square, we have Peter Vaihansky. He's the Vice President of DataArt. We are going to focus on open banking. Peter, as always, thank you so much for joining us at the MarketSite. Now, open banking, that is a newer concept for the Trade Talks audience. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So let's talk about it on a couple of levels. As a concept, open banking is this idea that banks should operate more like platforms that allow third parties to build and offer products, services, functionality on top of what the bank itself offers. We hear about unbundling of banking, unbundling of financial services. So banks are reimagining themselves as sets of distinct and interconnected capabilities. Think of Lego bricks, right? And so open banking is the idea that you open your Lego bricks to third parties, and those other people can take some of their bricks and some of your bricks and build new and exciting things and offer those things to your customers. Specifically in the UK, open banking, capital O, capital B, is a program that went live last year, about a year ago, January 2018. It's a program that's mandated by the government and administered by the regulators and paid for by the banks. The 9 leading banks in the market that cover about 90% of the market in the UK are participating in that program. And for consumers, it means that basically you as a customer of a bank now should have the ability to give permission to a third party to access your financial data, specifically your account balances and your transaction histories. And you could also instruct that trusted third party, approved third party, to send a payment from your account. So that's open banking in the UK.
Are you seeing mass adoption with that yet?
So the UK situation is driven by regulators. There's a broader regulation that's EU-wide that's called PSD2, Payment Services Directive 2, that's coming later in 2019. And so UK sort of preempted that, and they're now the first country in the world that has a single standard nationally mandated to implement open banking. The adoption has not been overwhelming, but that's okay, and let's talk about that for a second. So there are a lot of fears that have to do with security, and although security concerns are always valid, this is technology and things could happen, there's many, many reasons to be much less worried than people have been, especially based on the media coverage. And media has basically been playing up the contentious rather than the factual side of the story, and there's a tiny bit of fear-mongering going on, if I'm allowed to say.
When you hear third party, that's the first thing you think of.
Oh, you'll be hacked. As soon as you say the word hacked, everybody's worried, but what we have to understand about security of financial transactions is 2 things. One, managing API risk, as in giving programmatic access through an application programming interface to say, for example, a bank, is a very well understood area, and it's very well done elsewhere in the world, and open banking will be no different. So we need better PR. It's basically one of the lessons learned is you need better PR for financial technology. And the other is there's far easier methods to scam and defraud people. And it's kind of like if you and I are running away from a bear, you don't have to outrun me, or rather you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun me.
Right.
Spoiled my own punchline. So, so that same story, there's much easier ways. So that's why true hacks are super rare, because they're very, very hard. So there's that. The other thing is it's early days. It takes a while for the technology to be worked out. It hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been without hiccups. Integrations have not been entirely smooth and painless, but it's getting there. It's complex technology.
So you've identified 4 lessons that have been learned over the past year with open banking in the UK. What are some of those?
Some of those are, like I said, security. We need to really understand what is in fact a security risk, and security concerns are always going to be there. Could you be hacked? Yes, but like I said a minute ago, it's not really that great of a problem. The other thing about the overall awareness and adoption. So awareness has been low, but I think that's okay too. You know, you and I, we don't think about internet all that much, but our world runs on internet, but it's sort of faded into obscurity, and that's fine. It's the underlying infrastructure that powers everything. But we don't have to be aware of the internet as much as we need to be using what's on the internet. So by the same token, I think it's when people start using the valuable and cool and innovative stuff that's built using open banking. And by the way, what kind of stuff are we talking about? What's important about this innovation? So let's say, there's a good example. So Monzo is one of the challenger banks in the UK. Last year, they opened to the public, they offered to the public rather, this feature where if you have a gambling problem, you now have the ability to block yourself from making purchases from gambling merchants, online or in person. And you can do it from your app, and then they make it difficult for you to walk back the decision by forcing you to speak to someone in support if you want to unlock it, and then they will talk you out of gambling, basically. So in the open banking world, I don't have to be a bank to offer you this service. I can just come up with it, and I can integrate with the bank seamlessly, and you'll be using this wonderful service. Kudos to Monzo, obviously, but that's the illustration of what's enabled. So in terms of awareness and adoption, early days, and awareness is not as important as adoption.
Right. So do you think we're ever going to see this in the US? Is this really going to be a transformative initiative like MiFID II, for example, has been in Europe?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind, for sure. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen for a while, is in my opinion. It is transformative and makes a lot of sense for banks to want to do this. Now, to understand, the regulatory push is the reality in the EU and in the UK. It's not in the US. The US regulatory landscape is much more fragmented. So for comparison, in the UK, there's 2 regulators that are administering the program, CMA and FCA. In the US, there's, I think, 8 regulatory agencies on the federal level alone that have authority over financial data. And we're not talking about even beginning to talk about state level regulators. So it's more complex, but regulation is coming, but that's not the point. Whether or not it's coming, I think there's good reason for banks to want to move in that direction. Here's why. Platforms are eating the world, basically. Think of Amazon. Amazon went with API strategy a number of years ago. Did them a lot of good. They are arguably one of the most powerful and lucrative technology platforms in the world. They have made technology their business, and it's the fastest growing business that Amazon has, right? So if you're a bank, another analogy is Apple, right? When Apple launched the iPhone, it launched the iPhone with the iOS and some apps on it, but they didn't intend to keep writing all the apps.
Right.
What they did instead is they opened the App Store, and they opened things on the iPhone like its microphone, its camera, its touchscreen, its speakers, its the radio, its Wi-Fi radio, all of those things. They opened it up to developers and then unleashed this creativity onto the world. And what we have today is the app economy. So we're moving towards API economy, and there's a significant sustained advantage to first movers in this space. So I think not only challenger banks, but incumbents, well, we know that they're paying attention to that. We know cities do a lot with open API, and Capital One is not far behind. So it's going to happen. It makes a lot of sense, regulation or no regulation, but it's not going to happen very quickly.
All right, Peter, thank you, as always, for joining us at MarketSite. And thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.